Oh, we have 4 chapters left until the end. My God. The experience coming up in this chapter and the previous 2 chapters changed me in such a way. Firstly, it was probably the top 3 most horrible things I've been through in my life. Secondly, it opened my eyes to how the law can be manipulated, used and completely fucking fabricated. And to the amount of jaded people in the world that are in high-powered jobs. And I'm not saying they're all the same, because they're not. There's a couple of decent ones out there. But I can understand how, if you work in a toxic environment with toxic people, both above on your level and below you, and then you're working for the large point with criminals, that you become a bit of an arsehole. And I guess you have to be to keep that thing at a distance. I mean, you don't want to be taking that shit home with you, and you don't want to be going out of your house believing that everyone's a criminal or a horrible person anyway. But not every one of them is an arsehole, and not every person who gets arrested is a criminal, and not every person who gets accused of something has actually done those things, as hopefully you will discover here. I put a comment on one of the Reddit posts a few days back about contacting my friend when I came out of a police cell, which we'll go into shortly, and they quite rightly replied to the comment and said something along the lines of, well, what do you expect? I wouldn't have helped either. You just came out of jail. I'd not spoke to you in years. I hadn't just come out of jail. I'd come out of a police cell. I'd been arrested. I'd been cautioned. I'd been released. The caution was for assault. The assault was because I'd pushed somebody out of the way. Should I have pushed them? No. Were they blocking my exit? Yes. I'd asked them several times, yes. There's a very thin line between, legality and morality. Is it technically assault? Yes. Where do you go with that? However, it was a caution, it's spent. I don't see this as any major drama. There's certainly worse things in the world. There really is. However, people do get hung up on this a lot, and then later on when you learn the rest of it, my opinion, honestly, you get nicked for something, the first thing you do is get a solicitor. The first thing you do, you say your name, say your address, give them your ID, get your ass a solicitor, because they could have saved me so much bother through what you'll encounter here. And I'm 100% sure this individual MJ has worked onto another person, another person, another person, and it's not a male-female thing, because I'm also 100% sure my father, the scumbag that he is, has worked onto another person, another person, another person as well. In fact, I know he has. I know he's abused people, both his, I'll say partner, but it's not really the right word, is it? I'll use the word victim, and his victim's children, which unfortunately is another victim. But there we go. He's that way inclined. So my advice, get a solicitor. If you don't know something, get a solicitor. If you want to know something, get a solicitor. The worst thing happens is you lose some money. Otherwise, you'll end up in a situation like you're just about to hear about. Okay. So, let's go straight into chapter 36, Checkmate. I didn't pay much attention to the omelette and chips breakfast in the yellow styrofoam packaging. I just ate it. I was in survival mode. I didn't know where my next meal was coming from, but if it was anything like this meal, it would be a child's portion, and it was at the best half cooked. You can make a call, the officer told me as I went for a medical. I told the doctor about my shoulder, my parents, and the depression in vague detail. I declined the call. I only knew MJ and Pam. I wasn't calling MJ, and I wasn't worrying Pam. I was given a duty solicitor and was fingerprinted and DNA swab taken before I was questioned. I explained for over an hour the same thing that I'd explained before, and I knew nothing of the law. They told me I could accept the caution and not go back to MJ's despite the flat being a joint tenancy, or I could be held and go to court. What's a caution, I asked. You admit you pushed her and agree not to return to her place. It stays on record for 5 years, but you'll be free to go. He said it in front of a lady officer. Fuck it, I had no plans to be with her. I accepted it. I should have chosen court. I should have chosen my own solicitor. I should have found a way to go online and look up every single thing about the situation I was in, because my world was about to get much, much worse. But no, I believed the officers, and I accepted the caution. I remembered what I'd read in the book though, so when the bald desk man returned my rings and money but kept my house keys, I asked for a copy of my interview. "It can't be done now, you'll have to come back in a few days," he said, looking at me shocked. He was less impressed when I said, "No, sorry, the book says the same day as the interview. I'll wait if you don't mind." I naturally expected him to exert his authority, and he did. "You'll have to wait in a cell then," he said, smiling. "I will, but actually I don't, consider I've accepted the caution, therefore the crime is spent and I'm no longer under arrest." I didn't give him a chance to reply. I was walking to my cell. One of the women was ready to leave with her bag and coat when the desk guy nodded to her to signify she had to copy my tape. I'm a lot of things, I made a lot of mistakes, but I'm honest. I'd never hit MJ, and if I had, I'd have the balls to admit it. I'm not Wenzel. So after being treated like I was a woman beater, that small victory in making these clowns do some more work felt good. I wasn't just going to lie down and take shit. I'd had enough of that game. Around an hour and a half later the door opened and I was handed my cassette. "Time to go," he said. I was relieved as hell, but I wasn't going to let him see it. "What, so soon? I was just starting to like the place," I replied. "This way," he said, motioning me into the hallway. I winked at the desk guy on the way out. I stood outside looking up at the sky as the 11 a.m. sun hit my face, and for a whole 2 minutes I felt dirty. I felt guilty. I had a record. I was as bad as Wenzel, and even though I'd technically done nothing wrong, I felt the only way for me to go now was further down. I fought with the idea the world was crazy, and then settled on no, it was probably just me. I had to check. I walked to my right and found a notice board. Beside it was a bench. I sat down smiling. "Thanks, guys. Thanks for not leaving." I put my head in my hands and started crying. I immediately stopped myself. "Nope, not now, not here. I won't let the police see me break, or MJ think she's won. I won't quit. I can break down afterwards somewhere else. Not here. Think, Daily, think. What now? They've taken my keys. I wanted nothing to do with MJ, so I certainly didn't want anything to do with her now she had me arrested. For assault. I'd not mind if I'd have chinned her, but I hadn't." My mind went back to the interview. I told the woman honestly, "I'm glad you guys picked me up, because if you'd have picked my father up, my mother might have still been alive, so I do get it. I understand it, but you know what, sometimes you get the wrong guy. This is what's happened. If it was my father, you might have saved my mum that night, but it's me, and I've never hit a bird." Her reply was, "Have you ever had thoughts of killing MJ?" That bugged me. "No," I replied, looking straight at her. I held her gaze for 2 seconds, before continuing about how I'd got her into therapy. It was over and the interview was complete. I'd never have to go through that process again, I told myself. I called Louise. She'd been there for me as a kid. I'd been there for her numerous times when she was drunk. Okay, we hadn't spoken in 3 years, but she'd seen me right. If I could hitchhike to Cheshire, I'd stay there until I got on my feet. I was certain of it. There's no way she'd let me down. "Hi Louise, long time, sorry. Look, I don't have much battery and nowhere to charge my phone. I've just left MJ and I'm homeless. There's lots to tell. The police are involved if I'm honest. I'm a bit of a mess, to be fair. Any idea what I should do from here?" I asked her, not having the guts to ask for a place to stay, but I knew she'd help. I started walking in that direction, so no one could overhear my conversation. I knew exactly which way Cheshire was. It'd take me forever to get there, so I wanted to start moving now. "Wow, that's awful. You've got nowhere?" she asked me. "Literally what I'm stood up in, Doc. Just need a place to bed down to get my head straight. You got any ideas?" I asked more directly. "No, none, sorry. Give me a call when you get yourself sorted out though," she said cheerily. I managed a heartbroken "will do" before hanging up, and I burst into tears near college. The tears burnt my cheeks. I had nothing, no home, no money apart from a $5. No clothes, nowhere to charge my phone, no family, no friends. I stood there until I was empty of tears. People walked past as I stared at the sky. I didn't care and neither did they. Why? Why? I kept asking. What did I do? Seriously? I've been beaten, abused, cut, thrown, verbally abused, with not one arrest. I've defended myself against 2 knife attacks and not one arrest. I push a lass out of the way who's preventing me from leaving the flat and I lose everything. I felt a little voice I'd never felt before. It wasn't Alan. Quit. Go on. It's the 3rd time you've been homeless now. You're not worth anything. Nobody loves you. You're useless. Quit. They were my thoughts and I was familiar with them. I was back to the same thought patterns I'd had daily when I was with Wenzel. I'd treated myself like that for 20 years. I considered it. I looked at the college with its high tower. How do I get up there? I knew partially as the library was up there. As soon as I thought about it, I looked up at the sky. "You're right," I said out loud. "You're right, I've lost everything." I started sobbing. "I've lost everything and I'm probably not worth much." I bent double crying. I was holding my stomach as it cramped. It was a force to stand up straight. But I'm me. I know what I am, and I'll never give up. The tears burnt my cheeks as I turned towards college, but I was scared. I was scared if I went into college I'd find a way to get up that tower. I went from sad and lonely to fuming in seconds. I stopped and looked back at the college and kids passed by me. "I'm still standing. Come on, bring it, you worthless piece of shit. Strike me down. Is that all you've got?" I was on fire inside and out. The sweat was pouring from me. "Come on! Father killed mother, uncle abused sister." A woman looked at me as she went past and I laughed. "Ha! Father's a nut job, grandparents dead, self-harm and depression, arrested and homeless 3 fucking times. I started laughing like a maniac. "Is that all you've got? I'm still here. Kill me! Kill me! You can't fucking win!" I stormed through college like I was on a mission and explained to Phil, my IT tutor, why I wasn't in lesson and what the situation was. Phil was incredibly helpful. He allowed me to use their phone to call Citizens Advice Bureau, get information on what to do from here. Phil said he'd get me some free dinners if I could prove I was on income support. I declined. I couldn't prove shit. MJ had all of my paperwork. Besides, I wasn't owing A1 anything anymore. I had a credit card, I'd use that. They were a big company, they could take the debt. I left and walked a mile and a half to the library where I emailed Malona and I changed all my passwords. I explained everything I remembered clearly, ending with, "I totally understand if you don't want to speak to me anymore. Nobody else does. I can feel everyone looking at me like I'm a criminal." I booked into a bed and breakfast on my credit card and I had a shower. What I'd do if my phone died I didn't know. It was late when NJ called me. She called again and I ignored it. The 3rd time I answered it. "What?" I asked. "How you doing?" she asked me. "Fine, you were out of line. You had no reason to do that," I said. "Fuck off, you hit me, you beat me, you raped me," she shouted. "What?" I asked. "You fucking know what. You deserve whatever you get. Who is she?" she demanded. "What do you mean, raped you? I never laid my hands on you." I was gobsmacked, hurt, upset. I was worried I was losing my mind. "It's not what they think," she said, laughing. "Who's they?" "Who is she? And I might tell you," she said. "Who's who?" I asked. "Your new girl, the one you've been fucking whilst with me," she yelled. "I'm not with A1. Look, it's obvious you're not well. In fact, you're fucking twisted. But either way, I need my charger and clothes and my paperwork. Then we can go our own ways, yeah?" "I'm twisted." "She's there now, isn't she? She'd never have talked to me like that before. You were good, kind. What happened to you, bastard?" she said, hanging up. "What the hell?" I went to Penge and bought a phone charger, a notepad, drawing the cash from my credit card. I got bin bags as the police had kept mine. I took my phone up. I bought a rucksack for £80. It went everywhere with me, despite only having 2 biros and a bottle of water in it. I saw Pam and explained everything to her. She invited me around for tea next week to meet her family. I felt it was awfully trusted of her, considering what I'd just been accused of. I told her I'd have to tell her parents everything. At least part of me got me into this mess was lying from the outset. I'd said I was a different age when I met MJ. I'd said I owned my own home. I'd said a lot of shit which just wasn't true. And so how could I expect anyone to believe me about anything else? No more lies. If I was to meet her parents, they would know the truth about everything. The homeless persons unit wouldn't help me as I had no benefit letters, so I couldn't prove who I was. I called Daisy from Sam, who said if I had any problems with police or anything to get them to call her and she'd sort me right out. I got her to write a letter to say she knew me and was happy to confirm I am in fact who I said I was. Unfortunately they wouldn't accept that letter. It had to be a benefits letter, and without access to the flat I couldn't get it. I was getting nowhere. I'd been in the bed and breakfast over a week and I kept getting calls from MJ and was ignoring them. I'd never felt more lonely. I missed MJ, but not in the sense of missing her, just in the sense of missing someone being around. It was weird. I didn't like her and I was upset about what she'd done, even though I knew she was crazy, but I wasn't vindictive. I wanted to get on with my life. I needed my paperwork. I was stuck and couldn't see a way out. I called the Samaritans. Look, I'm not suicidal. I don't know exactly what you do, but it's got something to do with suicide, right? The woman said yes, and went on to explain they're basically there to listen to anyone who's having thoughts of harming themselves. I explained I wasn't, but that I needed to tell them a story. I told her about everything leading up to this moment, and I hung up. I bawled my eyes out. I made enough noise to wake up the entire building with my sobbing, and it went on for 2 hours or more. I felt no better afterwards, but at least I'd been through a part of the process. I called them back and said thank you to a different woman. She said she'd try and pass the message on, say thanks, and that I could call again whenever I needed. It was useful in ways, but offered zero support otherwise. I was still homeless, I was still in the shit, and without the credit card I'd have been screwed. My head was slumped over my full English when a man in his mid-50s came downstairs folding his newspaper. "Good morning, oh beautiful day, isn't it?" he said, pointing to the sun coming through the window. I wanted to grab him and rake his face across my plate of tomatoes and mushrooms. I wanted to slam him repeatedly into the window while shouting, "Why are you so fucking happy?" I was angry with my life big time. Of course, instead I looked up, sighed to let him know I didn't give a shit, and said, "Yeah, you must have heard me bawling last night." "It's a magical day, one where anything is possible," he smiled. I looked at him like shit on my shoe as he opened his paper. I looked out at the sun. It sure was pretty. "Thanks," I said, leaving the table. "What for?" he asked, holding his paper. "The chat. Just thanks," I said. As I headed off, he called back. "We can talk more tonight," he said. I ignored him. I wanted nobody's charity. I made the most of that day by ploughing into getting housing help. Maybe it was that old guy. Maybe it was pure bloody minded, or maybe I just had no choice. I went to the police station and told them everything. They said it wasn't their problem. I should get a solicitor. I'd never had one, I had no money. Luckily a woman queuing to be seen slipped me a phone number when she left. "They'll help you," she said. I hoped she was right. I checked my email and Malona had replied I was over the moon. Not only did she still want to talk to me, she replied with a ton of legal information that she'd found online. More so, she replied with a comment that really helped me see sense. "Give it a rest, Tracy. She's what, 30 stone? I'm sure if you tried to hurt her, she could have dropped you no problem." It wasn't the "no Tracy, you're not the type to hurt a woman" that I was looking for, but at least it meant she believed in me. And that meant worlds. She was brilliant. She kept me sane as I emailed her every day from the library. Apparently the police had no right to request that I don't go back to the property because it was a joint tenancy, and I wasn't under any sort of injunction. Malona was right, of course, but I wasn't going back. I didn't want to be arrested again. I needed proof I was a good guy. I got hold of David, who provided my therapy notes, which stated she had a controlling nature and a fear of leaving because of her threats. Then I got copies of these silly online questionnaire things people do. MJ had sent it to a friends list, including Malona, which stated clearly, "I love my boyfriend so much. He's always there for me, even when I'm kicking off." I called my credit card to check the balance and found I had just £200 left. I explained everything and they gave me a breakdown of the charges and debt. Turned out I had more on my card than I thought. MJ had done some Christmas shopping as well and bought her parents some gifts. I asked them to send me the breakdown in writing and signed on Facebook to see if I could find any old messages that had helped my case. I had a friend's request, and it was MJ. I screenshot it and bunged it in a Word document and sent it myself and Malona copies, then I blocked her. I called the number the lady gave me. It turned out to be a free legal advice line. They taught me through how to get a solicitor to remove my stuff from the property, so that's what I did. They said I could get police escort. They needed a list of the things I wanted. It was pretty simple. I wanted my guitar, my paperwork, my charger, my Polo Cowboy but the Warrior of Light. She could keep the PC and anything else I'd bought. I didn't care. I just wanted my basics and a clean break. MJ was home when I turned up with a policeman and 2 policewomen. They said they'd talk to her first and I could get my stuff. What did I want? I explained and they said they'd go and get them and I could wait in the hall. I agreed. They got my basic ID, but nowhere near the amount of paperwork that I had in there. MJ told them she couldn't find the charger. The policewoman asked me to come with her, which I did. I immediately pointed to the charger on the table when MJ ran out of the bedroom claiming it was hers and screaming. The policewoman asked me to wait in the hall, which I did. I said she could keep it, but I needed the guitar, clothes and the book. The clothes were already in 4 black bags, so I took them outside. I was waiting for the guitar and the book when a policeman came down with the book. He told me she said she bought the guitar as a gift, as a matter of law it was hers. I told him she's full of shit, but she can keep it. It will prove everything. The book will prove everything. I opened the Paulo Coelho book to find she'd ripped the front page out. I shook my head in disbelief as a motorbike pulled up behind me. I sat down on the bin bag and asked War the policeman what happens now. He said he thought I'd arranged for a lift or something. A man tapped me on the shoulder and asked my name. Yes, I said. He handed me an envelope and then left. I opened it and I nearly fell apart. I was due to be at court as I was being accused of over 120 different accounts, from damaging goods, threatening behaviour, through to rape. From the first time we were in a bread and breakfast, she alleges I'd told her not to talk to anyone, through to present day when she claims she was raped over 100 times. I half fell and half sat down. A policeman sat beside me. "Are you okay?" he said. I asked for a smoke and handed in the papers. "What you want me to do?" he asked. "Read that," I said, holding my hand out for a lighter. His other policeman friend came over. "Anything new?" he asked. "Usual shit, poor bastard," he said, looking at me. My cab turned up and they helped me load it up. The woman behind the wheel looked a bit concerned, but the copper smiled at me. "He's okay, we were just helping him out," he said. I didn't have the energy to nod. I was in shock. "Sure you want to know?" I asked the woman when I was halfway there. "Yeah," she said. I turned my head to look at her and then looked away. I felt bad. I knew she'd see me differently the instant I told her. "I've just been accused of 124 accounts of abuse, most of which were rape," I said. "They should have told me," she said, looking nervous and clutching the wheel a bit tighter. "They should. I agree. But I am innocent," I said meekly. "Do you want me to get out?" I asked her genuinely. "No, dear, you told me. You didn't have to," she said. "But don't be offended if I stay in the car when you unload, okay?" she added. "No worries," I replied, figuring I'd have to get used to not being trusted now as well. I unpacked at the B&B, who told me I couldn't put that amount in my room, but I could put it in their shed, but it had to be gone as soon as I could. I agreed. I gave the cabbie the only note I had from the MTM, which was a 20. "Keep it," I said, pressing it through the small gap she'd left by the window's edge. She was nervous enough already. She just wanted to escape before the woman-beating rapist did anything to her. I felt really, really sick. This was beyond reality. I'd asked Pam to meet me in Bromley, in a place where I knew there were CCTV cameras. She agreed. "It's the last time I'm going to see you, Pam," I said. "Why?" she asked, looking upset. "Same reason I asked to meet you in a public place surrounded by cameras. I don't trust anybody anymore, and I won't be alone with a woman. Thanks for not hating me. Thanks for listening, but I have to go." She leaned forwards to hug me and I jumped backwards. "See you, Pam," I said as I turned and walked away. I couldn't let her see me crying. Chapter 37, and we're nearly at the end of Checkmate, thankfully, because this has not been easy. None of this has been easy, really. But I can't wait for the end 2 chapters, I really can't. And I can't wait to explain to you what the last 15 years has held. I really can't. My name's Tracie Daily, chapter 37 of Checkmate. "Sorry, Mr. Daly, it doesn't matter that you've got ID. Technically, you've made yourself intentionally homeless. You still have a home with MJ. I couldn't believe it. Sat there at the homeless persons unit all day waiting to be seen. If you've never been in one of these places, you're lucky. They're one of the most depressing places in the world. I used to go there every Christmas to drop toys in for the kids in care, because it was also the social services offices. I knew that kids without much could go there and they'd get the parents a toy or two each for their children without fail. Every year I'd given them something. I wasn't expecting anything back, but I was expecting them to recognise my goodwill and try to help me with the homeless situation. Hell, I knew 4 of that team by name before today's meeting. The B&B agreed that I could leave my stuff in their shed for a week, but my credit card had run out now, and so I had nowhere to live. They offered me a room for the night, guessing my predicament when the card was declined, but I couldn't accept it. I had a tiny bit of dignity left. I wasn't giving it away. I headed from the housing office to Mario's, where I'd become a regular for my usual sausage and batter. Mario was cool. He was a big Italian fella who did handgun shooting in his spare time. He legally owned a sidearm. We barely spoke, but I overheard a few of his conversations. His dad ran the chip shop and a cafe further down. A big fellow with close-cropped short hair and a friendly smile. Every now and then he'd throw in a bap or an extra sausage at no charge. Today a group of lads were in, and they were already half-cut and heading to the pub afterwards. "Oi, dickhead, give me chips," the tall one said, slamming his hand down. Mario and my eyes met briefly. I nodded. He'd got it. If shit turns bad, he either wanted me to get help or to help him. Either way, I wasn't moving. This was my local, and they'd been good to me. "Right, lads, what we having?" he asked. Words were exchanged as the two smaller lads grabbed cans from the fridge, and they filled their pockets. I took my plate up. Fuck it. "Coffee, please, Mario," I said, and turned to the lads. "And don't forget these boys' cans," I said, pointing at them. They said nothing. I went back to my table and sat down as I pulled out my notepad and pen. I wasn't writing, but if it kicked off I wasn't scrapping, there was too many of them. I wanted my pen handy. At least if I got nicked I had food and a bed. After gobbing off at Mario for a minute and grabbing their chips, they stood leaning on the counter, hurling insults at him. I walked over and stood next to the lad closest to me. Show no fear, confidence creeps them out. I remembered Carl looking through Phil when I was in care, and it somehow gave me confidence. One of the lads got pushed into me. "What?" he said, as though I was the problem. I just looked at him for a couple of seconds and stood in front of him, then sipped my coffee without taking my eyes off of his. He was about a second away from it going in his face when the tall lad said, "Come on guys, let's go." They left and I sat down. "On the house," Mario said, nodding to my coffee. I nodded back. At least someone liked me. It had been a while. I don't know how long, but my feet hurt. I had no money. I'd been walking around all day. Emergency housing and social services wouldn't help me. Even the emergency grant place wouldn't assist. I didn't exist. My socks stuck to my feet and it hurt like walking on bare floor. I had less than quarter battery left. I truly didn't know how the phone had lasted so long. I headed to the church. I knew they had a radiator and it might help me keep warm. I figured I had enough battery for one call, 2 at the most. It really was my last hope. Otherwise I was just going to sit in the church and keep warm until a priest threw me out. "What do you have?" I asked myself. I knew I could build on that. I could steal a knife and make a bivouac. I could light a fire and steal food. I'd love to say I didn't because of some moral standard. The truth is, however, I didn't, because I didn't have the energy. I didn't know the area well enough to get to a forest with what energy I did have. This place wasn't like up north. In Macclesfield I can walk an hour in any direction or be in the countryside. Down south, an hour, in most directions, and you'll find nothing but more big buildings. I rummaged through my pockets to see what else I had that could help me and found a piece of paper. It was the free legal advice line the woman at the police station had given me. I called her, explained everything to the guy on the phone, starting with, "I have no fixed abode and my phone's about 5 minutes away from death. I'm at the church in Bromley, next to the big Churchill building." I couldn't fault the guy on the phone, he was brilliant. He took notes and promised to call me back. "I don't have battery," I told him. "Where are you?" he asked. I repeated the address. He said if my battery died, just stay there. He called me back inside 10 minutes and my phone died halfway through whatever he was saying. "Shit!" I said inside the church hallway. I looked through the chapel door, which I tried, and it was locked. "Fuck you!" I muttered under my breath, leaned against the radiator and slid down the wall. Now what? I had visions of being pissed on by a homeless guy as I walked beside the church, and hoped it really wouldn't come to that. About 20 minutes later a suited man entered the hall. He was smart, clean-cut and spoke in short sentences. He was very clipped and direct. He reminded me of my Uncle Carl, and he wasn't taking any shit. "Tracie Daily?" he said, looking down at me. At first I thought he was a cop, then figured he was too well dressed, and then figured fuck it, who gives a shit? "Yes," I replied, instantly regretting it, hoping he wouldn't pull out an envelope and accuse me of another 100 allegations. "Come with me," he said. "And you are?" I asked. His demeanour changed. "Mr. Lee Black of Blah Blah Solicitors. I believe you're homeless. I got a call from yada yada at Free Legal Advice Line." He asked me some questions and asked me to sign a form. I read it. Last time I signed a form in front of a solicitor, I ended up with a criminal record. It was only a caution, but I don't know, mate, I said honestly. His response tickled me. "Ask yourself, what choice do I have?" He had a point. I signed it and he gave me an address. "What's this?" I asked, wobbling foot to foot. My feet hurting. "That's where you sleep tonight," he said. "Tell them I sent you. They're expecting you. You'll be okay," he said with an unwavering stare. I had the feeling this guy believed everything he said unfalteringly. I was shocked. Half an hour ago I didn't have a pot to piss in. Now I had a solicitor. He was trying to help me, somewhere to sleep. "You be okay?" he said, looking down at my feet. "Yeah, I'm good. I'll find it. Thanks, man. Thanks," I said. It was a main road, a set of rooms that looked like they used to be offices. I had to go through a door to enter reception. A black lady was there called Stephanie, and 2 guards with more room in a room behind her. "I'll show you to your room and we'll have a chat tomorrow," she said. "Can you show me?" I asked, pointing to a guy who looked switched on. "It's okay, I don't mind," she said, standing. I'd clocked 2 cameras and went in. "Am I on camera all the way around?" I asked her. "Don't you like cameras?" she asked back, obviously used to the question. "It's okay, there's none in your room," she added. "You don't understand, love. I feel safer on camera. No offence. I've just been accused of 124 things that I didn't do because I was alone with a woman," I said. She stopped and looked at me. I took 3 steps back and stood myself in front of one of the outside cameras. "I trust you. If it makes you feel better, I'll come back when you're at your room," she said. "Okay," I replied, nodding to the camera, and knowing that switched on guy would be watching. I walked several paces from Stephanie until we reached the door. She gave me a key which I took at arm's length and went inside. She followed me. "You're safe here," she said. "I know," I replied. "Please, on camera when with me," I said, slumping my head. She stepped back outside into the line of sight of the camera. "Toilets are down there. Make coffee in the kitchen," she said, closing the door. It was a large room with a bed and bedclothes, a TV, a set of joining windows covered by long curtains, and best of all, a roasting hot radiator. My shoulder was actually killing me from being tense and carrying my bag. I lay against it and flinched. Didn't realise how much pain I'd been in. It took me ages to undo my boots and get them off, but I didn't care. I got undressed totally and put my trousers back on. Then I took my underwear and socks to the kitchen. I didn't know if it was communal or not, because there were doors at either end of the corridor, but it wouldn't be long and I had to risk it. I also didn't know if I was on camera or not, but I needed this. I washed myself down in the sink, drenched my boxers and socks in tap water, gave them a good squeeze out in the sink, and slung them over the radiator to dry. I did the same with my t-shirt. I tied my boots together and slung them round my neck. If I had to get out in a hurry, I'd have my boots, if nothing else. My feet hurt on the old coal tile floor. I made a coffee in an old cup. There was no milk, so I just bunged 8 sugars in. I sat in bed with the duvet around me and tried to think about positive things, like how lucky I was not to be homeless tonight. It got me thinking about college. I remember I had a pad in my rucksack. I got my English homework out and I started doing that. The task was to write a story about your life. I wrote about Christmas at MJ's and how our mother would inch the table up so as the Christmas tree stuck into my back until it bent. Then they'd fall asleep after stuffing themselves with chocolate. I wrote in red because it's all I had. I explained in the writing where I was now and why I didn't have a blue pen. Then I looked at the black TV capable of giving up so much, and yet it sat there doing nothing. I felt like that TV, totally reliant on whether someone else could help me be active or not. I balanced my pen on the door handle and placed a sheet of paper on the floor beneath it. If it fell, I'd hear it. I fell asleep listening to the endless stream of cars going past, each one sounding like it was saying, "Go on!" as it whizzed past. In the morning I was told by Stephanie, who I'd seen through the plexiglass reception window, that I'd get an on-your-feet parcel or some similarly designed gift from the rich to the poor. I just nodded. I didn't want handouts. I'd been given my own room until told otherwise. I didn't know anything about where I'd be when I returned. I headed to college. I was early, and Pam was on reception. I said my highs and she blanked me. Can't say I blamed her. Julia, my maths teacher, went past several times. "Tracy, you're not due until 9:30. Why are you here so early?" she asked. "I'm chatting up the receptionist," I joked. She laughed. Pam didn't. Sod it. Truth it is then. "I'm almost, love. It's warm here, that's why I'm early." At this point she did something which I respected, but I was so embarrassed about it at the time. She pulled her purse out and took £10 and handed it outwards. "No, love," I said, waving it off. "I got myself into this mess. I'll get myself out of it. Thanks, though," I said. "But what do you have?" she asked me. "What you see is what I got," I said, holding up my tobacco and my phone. "But I'm not taking your money," I added. I walked away. "If there's anything I can do," she called after me. I could feel her sympathy and it hurt my pride. I liked her. She'd done the right thing. I sat in college an hour when I heard people talking about a college therapist. I left my lesson to go to the toilet and signed up there and then. I was told she'd give me a call when she was free. Stephanie had to give me an interview where I had to answer questions mostly about whether I'd had drink or drug related problems, or whether I got angry easily, self-harmed, or had ever attempted suicide. She told me mine was an unusual situation and that I'd make it. I presume she said that to everyone. I'd refused to interview unless a guard was present. They'd stood in the corner the entire time. "I won't hurt you," she said as soon as I'd gone in. I wanted to believe her. My new room was the same as the other one, but a lot smaller and with a cooler radiator. I was happy just to have my own little bit of space that I could sleep in. I had a single bed with no covers or anything, but I couldn't complain. It was off the floor and there was a cupboard as well as a sink and a TV with a built VCR. I was told that I could cook whatever was in the box and anything I bought myself. My rent was just £8 a week, and my first week was free if I got a place within that time. I was torn between realising the similarities between Wenzel's halfway house and being happy. I had a box of unknown contents from someone who didn't know me. I called my solicitor who got me out of the meetings as long as I agreed to see Stephanie weekly at a minimum. It was a deal. I was okay with Stephanie, I just didn't fancy a group of junkies and alcoholics deciding I was their new best friend. I unpacked the box trying to think positively. "Wherever I lay my hat, that's my home," I sang softly. I had 2 shelves, both were damaged, but I had a small built-in wardrobe with a shelf on it. The tinned food in the box went in the wardrobe and my rucksack became my pillow. There were tins of all descriptions, mostly of stuff I didn't eat. A tin opener, a fork and a spoon, a plate, and right at the bottom my hand touched a warm sheet. It was wool, around 4 feet by 4 feet and knitted in coloured patches. I held it to my skin and the cold still biting me. I left the box where it was and I cried. I cried for all I was worth because I had a sheet. Thank you," I said over and over as I curled up against the wall on my new dirty mattress. I fell asleep with the wool against my face before 5 p.m. and didn't wake up until the afternoon the following day. The door was knocking. It was Stephanie asking if I was okay, so they hadn't seen me in 24 hours. Apparently there was a check-in system. If nobody saw you, then the entire building came looking. I got therapy at college almost immediately and her name was Angela. She had a nice smile and she was very friendly. "Hi, and how can I help you?" she asked. "I'm not sure you can," I thought to myself. I was very aware of being alone in a room with an attractive woman. I looked around in a vain attempt to stop myself appearing uncomfortable. There was a 2-seater sofa and a small desk, a small table between the sofa and a chair where Angela was seated. I went to stand by the window as I could see out, and wondered if the car park camera could see me here. I was hoping it could. To be honest, I was totally speechless. How could I tell her about my past, and then hit her with everything MJ had accused me of? She was such a dainty little thing. I didn't suppose for a minute she'd be ready for the type of material I was going to dump on her. I asked about seeing a male therapist. She cocked her head to the side and smiled, prompting me to continue. I'm not sure how she made me feel so at ease, but she made me feel relaxed. I'm sure she wasn't copying my body language. I figured if I just told her a little bit, I could judge myself whether she would handle it or not. I explained about being homeless, and ran over having anxiety attacks vaguely. I was here simply because I needed to talk about it all, and that was all. I explained how I got from Manchester to Bromley, omitting all the violence, but including MJ's controlling mentality. Angela praised my college achievements and asked if I'd like to see her again or someone else. Naturally I agreed, but I told her straight I was nervous as hell. As soon as I left that room, as far as I was concerned, she could accuse me of anything. And who would doubt her? How would I prove my innocence? Do you really believe I'd do that? She asked me genuinely. She was a kind person, I could see it in her eyes. But I was me, and I was used to people turning. "See you next week," she said, as I left. I saw Pam as I got downstairs. "Fancy a walk after work?" I asked. "Yeah, okay," she said, tapping away at the keyboard. I was up court for the injunction in a week. I wanted to say bye before I got it put into place. I knew nothing of the law. If she wanted the injunction, she could have it. I wanted nothing to do with her anyway, but I was gutted she'd felt the need to make these stupid accusations. I was at Pam's parents and trying to praise myself for getting past my fear of being with a woman when it came to Pam's parents, Pam or Angela. I was surprised when I entered the house and found the light switches were all lower down. High tables so a wheelchair could fit anywhere, and her parents had made the garden accessible too. It was beautiful with lots of foreign plants in. They had a downstairs space turned into Pam's bedroom with an ensuite disabled access bathroom. It looked great. It was a good family, and they treated me well. I made myself scarce at meal times, not wanting to feel intrusive and feeling like I didn't belong. The more I saw how great they were together, the more I craved family. Pam's mum was called Tracie too. She did all the cooking and cleaning for Pam with a smile on her face. She used to take her out whenever she wanted to go if she needed help. She was her mum, her therapist and her friend. Andy was no different, just quieter. He sorted the bills and the house, but was just as caring and protective of Pam. I felt I was living a lie. I'd had 2 meals with them and told them nothing apart from the fact that I was at college and wanted to work. Pam had a sister called Lucia. I hardly saw her. She was able-bodied, a good-looking blonde girl, very outgoing. She was rarely home, seemed to have a fieriness about her that I admired, but I didn't want it around me. A here is my opinion whether what you want it or not type. The more I got to know Tracie and Andy, the more I knew I had to tell them. The more I got to know Pam, the more I realised beyond the bubbly nature she was very, very depressed. To this day I cannot pinpoint why. At work she was an amazingly positive young woman. At home she was a complete mess. Her dad informed me she uses lies like we would potentially to progress a physical altercation. Therefore we might get angry to extremes. She could lie to extreme. I didn't think much of it and understood the theory behind it, but to be fair I was keeping some pretty hefty secrets of my own. It's not like I could judge. Initially I was told Lucia was jealous of Pam because she had a boyfriend. Me, however, over time it became apparent Pam wouldn't hesitate to get her own way. Lucia wasn't jealous of Pam. Pam was jealous of Lucia. Lucia could work, had a job and led a full life. Pam was stuck between loving her as a sister and hating her because she could do the things she couldn't. I felt sorry for both of them. It must have been hard loving a sister who would eternally turn on you, no matter what you did for them. Andy was in the back garden when I told him. I simply handed him the accusations. I'll leave immediately if you want me to, and I understand completely if you never want me to see your daughter again, I said. He read through them, and I told him my story from moving to Bromley until now. If you get charged, don't come back here. Otherwise, you're welcome here any time. We like you, and Pam loves you. You're good here, he told me. I couldn't have respected him more. If I'd have been in his position, I'd have kicked me clean out. Court day came in no time. I'd practiced speech after speech after speech like I was in a review meeting as a child. While Pam was watching music channels, I was reciting answers in my head and following them up with further questions and then answering them myself. I treated it like I was playing chess with Wenzel. Whatever move they threw at me, I'd have a better one. Andy offered to take me to court and I declined. They'd fed me most nights as I came straight from college to see Pam. As much as I kept telling myself nothing could happen with Pam and I, it was no secret we'd become an item. Everyone knew, including the staff at college. I'll never forget her mum asking me, "So what do you say when people ask you about Pam?" "I say she's my partner," I replied. To which Tracie let out, "Oh!" People's perceptions are exactly that, theirs. I don't care what people think about me and Pam, as long as they keep it to ourselves if it's negative. Tracie seemed to understand. It was hard not to fall for Pam. She'd been there when others weren't, and I had this overpowering feeling of wanting to be needed and needing to be understood or accepted. I was totally confused. I had no issues with her physical condition in the slightest, and I was convinced I was in love. That said, I had nobody, and I was convinced the lies MJ had spun like thick cobwebs were about to cling to my face and choke me. Having Pam around fueled my desire to not feel guilty, and my belief that I had a purpose. If a disabled lass trusts me, I must be okay, surely. As it stood, I accepted this injunction without a solicitor. The guy making the decisions had actually asked me if I was sure I didn't want a solicitor. I'd agreed I didn't need one. I wanted nothing to do with MJ, and I had no reason to object to the injunction. I didn't realise the implications. And again the guy making the decision said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." I wanted out of the same room as her as quick as possible. If I'd known anything about the law then, I would have got myself a solicitor. Unfortunately, by accepting the injunction, the person making the claim has rights. In this case, when they make a further accusation about you, whether you've done anything or not, you get arrested immediately and ask questions later, as opposed to ask questions and then arrested. I found this out the hard way. The first time I was at home when the door went at 7 a.m. I answered the door half asleep and was immediately bundled into the back of a police van. I was allowed 5 minutes from answering the door to being in the van with handcuffs on to get my gear before we left for the station. When I got to the station, I was told that MJ said last night I was seen outside her place in Bromley with a rucksack on. I'd spent the majority of the night at Pam's, including another time a few days later when she said I was outside her flat. I had 3 witnesses who were happy to state this, and it was at this point I started writing down my every move from the minute I left the flat, who I saw, what time I saw them, what time I left, and if I ever had free time, I tried to spend it in public places where I could be observed on camera, so I could always be found out to be telling the truth. Twice they called me whilst I was at college and in lesson, to which tutors informed the police I'd been there all day. Once I was picked up from college, because they'd made an accusation about me during my lunch hour. I was exactly where I said I'd been, which was with 2 friends and some animals in the animal section of the college. Most often than not, they'd take me in and my solicitor would turn up, explain the situation, and they'd let me go again. However, sometimes MJ made an accusation late in the day, and they'd pick me up in the evening, which meant staying in a cell the night until my solicitor turned up the following day. I soon learnt who was a good solicitor and who wasn't. Either way, I was always released without charge. They had no evidence, but had to pick me up because MJ making an accusation whilst I was under injunction meant that they had to. They never charged me because they had no proof. I still only had on my record that injunction, which would be spent in around 4 years. Why? Because I'm innocent. However, one day amidst all the mess of juggling college, getting arrested for no reason whatsoever, and getting on with my life, I went to the bank to hand a cheque in. Part of my injunction was that I wouldn't go in a certain distance of MJ, or where she lives, or contact her in any way, or ask anyone else to. All of which I happily signed off to. However, as I entered the bank, MJ and her dad were leaving. I was listening to headphones and stepped to one side well out of the way of the walkway, and I removed my headphones. MJ saw me and walked past. Her dad saw me and walked past. I knew this was going to bite me in the arse, but there was nothing I could do about it. I went to the bank and then straight to where Pam was volunteering to tell her I wouldn't be around that night because I was just about to get arrested. She was getting to the point where she understood the process, and I headed off to the police station to explain the situation. Apparently MJ had just alleged I approached her in the bank and stuck 2 fingers up at her. I requested the police get the CCTV from the bank. They refused. I left as the police said they were not going to arrest me, and I went to my solicitor and explained it to them. I asked them to get the CCTV from the bank, which would prove my claim. She said she'd sort it out and not to worry. It was shortly after that I got told I was going to court for breaking the injunction on the day that I saw MJ in the bank. With all the accusations, if I was found guilty, I was looking at jail time. Naturally I was gutted, but I was getting quite used to being gutted.